Hey, hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Speed Mooting Conversations with Counsel podcast. My name is John Dove, and I'm the host of the podcast. And today I've got a very good friend of mine on the podcast, Danny Greenland. Known each other for about 10 years now, I think, because we did our LPC at the same time at BPP in Liverpool, didn't we, Danny?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
known each
Yeah.
other a while now. So, Danny, just to start, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Yeah. So, as John's said with his great introduction, my name's Danny Greenland. I'm a managing associate with Linklaters. I work in the London office and I sit in the TMT team. I think potentially as the conversation goes on, we can get into exactly what TMT is,
Yeah,
but maybe we leave it there for now.
we can expand on that. It's not
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is it now?
Unfortunately, not. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll start with a nice, easy one for you. Would you like to tell us what is your favorite holiday destination?
It's a tough one. They've got a whole world to choose from. I've just got back from Bilbao though, quite recently,
All right.
and that's right up there for me. Great
Mm.
music at a festival overnight, and then you're just an hour away from San Sebastian, so fantastic food in the day. Lovely people, lovely city. Highly recommend it.
Brilliant. And is it beachy around there, or is it more of a city holiday?
So by San Sebastian, there's a little bit of a beach. There's a little sort of coastline thing there. You can walk up the mountains as well. Bilbao itself less so, but you've got a real mix just in that sort of North Spain area. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, somewhere different to try.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'll ask you a few questions about your life in the law then. So what was it that made you initially choose a career in law?
Yeah, so bit of an interesting one for me. I actually decided while I was still in school
Mm.
that I wanted to do law. Probably around the time I was picking my A levels. I was on a fence about which way I wanted to go. And what tipped it for me was an English teacher I had who'd introduced us to the poetry of John Donne. I don't know if everyone will remember John Donne from their English classes or not, but he's a sort of 1600s
Mm.
poet. Spent a lot of time writing dirty poems, like a little
Oh,
bit naughty for the time, and then switched and became, I think, deacon or vicar or whatever the word is of St. Paul's Cathedral and started writing, religious poems.
wow.
But I found the power of his words, the power of his metaphors, to be quite interesting. I also
Mm.
realized as the class was going on, I had a bit of a skill for appreciating what was being said, maybe seeing through the surface meaning to get the joke that's underlying or the references that were about. And so I sort of took that and ran with it. What is the most powerful thing that words can do or that I could do with this skill around words and wordplay? And I landed on law. I think, whether that's in the barrister profession, which I did consider at one time, or in the solicitor profession, probably more spoken in the barrister side, maybe more written on the solicitor side.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I just really enjoy language and playing with it and using words in a powerful way.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that. I
Yeah.
remember speaking with a judge after a case, and sometimes judges like to have a little chat with the advocates, and he was saying to us, a piece of advice he was given. So this is a very senior judge who was a silk at the time, and he said a piece of advice he was given back when he was a pupil by a senior judge. He said, "Words to a barrister are like operating tools to a surgeon." I thought, really powerful
Yeah,
and
yeah,
quite true.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. Now, of course, you followed the route through and you did actually become a solicitor in the end. So I think you've touched on it briefly there, but what was it that made you want to become a solicitor rather than a barrister?
Yeah, I think this is one of those big what ifs that I'm sure everyone has their own what ifs. One of those what ifs for me. I watched Judge John Deed with my mum. I'd seen the people in the gowns and wigs, and I liked the idea of it. And I actually mooted a lot at university,
Oh,
both as part of the team and then later coaching the team. when I was more senior in my studies, and really enjoyed it. And I think for me, ultimately, it came down to a bit of a numbers game.
Mm,
I looked at, the number of pupilages that are available each year, the number of training contract places that are available each year, and I just went with the one that I thought gave me a better chance on the probabilities.
yeah.
I'm happy. I would have been happy either way, and I am happy where I landed now. But I think that is honestly the real choice that I made at the time.
Yeah, I think that that's a sensible approach to take, really, because definitely a piece of advice I give to young aspiring lawyers is to think, think into the future and think what is your path into this career going to be, and that's obviously what you've done from an early stage. Thought, well, how am I going to get from point A to point B, and you've looked into it and figured out the straight line path, as it were. So very forward thinking of you.
And I
So
think, one of the beauties of the profession with its two halves is that you're not necessarily, pigeonholed forever.
no,
Either, solicitor advocates do a lot of work these days, and even people who aren't necessarily doing a lot of advocacy can also, if they choose to, go out to get the experience that they need and switch at a later point. I think very much determined by your personal circumstances at the time of your studies,
yeah.
which way you might go first, even if ultimately you'd prefer to land on the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. And as you say, there's always that option to swap, which is certainly something I did. I was a solicitor advocate for some time and then became a barrister. As you say, with the crossover these days as well. So as a barrister, you can have a litigation extension on your practicing certificate. So you can do all the things that a solicitor would. And then likewise, as a solicitor, you can have the advocacy extension, the higher rights of audience. So there's absolutely no sort of limit to what's possible. So don't worry about if you've made one choice as to which way you're going to go into this profession. You're not stuck, as you say. So yeah, absolutely great advice. Now you work for Linklaters, obviously a very prestigious firm. What was it that first made you want to apply to Linklaters?
Yeah, so I guess, I was always aware of Linklaters. It's one of the firms that you come across on Legal Cheek. It's one of
Mhm.
the firms that you might see in the Financial Times or on Roll on Friday, or wherever you're getting your legal news from. So I didn't know about it, and I originally, you know, I started my applications a little late actually in my career, but had thrown my hat into the ring with a few of the Magic Circle firms when I was still an undergraduate. Ultimately, that didn't go anywhere for me.
Hmm.
And I had a slightly roundabout way of getting to where I am today. So I finished my undergraduate degree at a non-Russell Group university. I took I was advised actually to maybe top up that reputation. So I'd hit a first
Hmm.
at a non-Russell Group. And someone advised me, well, people could judge a first at a non-Russell Group, but why don't you go and do a master's and maybe a step up in terms of university, and it
Right.
might prove that you've just topped out on your undergraduate. So I did that. So I went on to do a master's in maritime law. Actually, not something that I
Oh.
do too much now, but I found it interesting at the time. Went on to do my LPC, secured a training contract at a great firm in Liverpool called Brabner's,
Mhm.
just on exchange flags for those that know Liverpool, which was a fantastic place to work, really nice,
Yeah.
just behind the town hall. And a friend of mine who I used to work with in an admin role had since secured his training contract. He got a training contract at DLA and then
Right.
moved from DLA to Linklaters. And he just happened to casually mention that there was an opening. And Linklaters being the firm it was, I couldn't not try again.
No, of
Uh,
course.
so I did. I threw my hat in the ring. And I'll always remember my first interview with a partner from Linklaters, a partner I work very closely with today, who's absolutely fantastic, and I still learn a lot from.
Hmm.
And she said to me, "Why do you want to work for Linklaters?" And I said, "I'll be honest with you, I never thought I'd sit in this interview room. Everything from this moment on is a bonus." And it has been. I never thought I'd ever get to London or to a firm like Linklaters, and I'm just really happy every day that I did.
Yeah. And of course, you've progressed really well at Linklaters. So I understand you've recently been promoted to managing associate.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So some firms have senior associates. In Linklaters, we call them managing associates. It's essentially the same role across firms. So a little bit more senior. Maybe
Mhm.
it's taking more of a leadership role on a deal. Maybe you're doing more of the negotiations, more of the structuring and strategy,
Yeah.
bringing juniors along with you, and then you've always got a partner behind you as well, just to check
Wow.
things with.
This video is brought to you by Speed Mooting. We are an organisation that help aspiring and junior lawyers. We run online and in-person advocacy and mooting competitions. We do online advocacy and public speaking training, and we run lots of other events to assist people on their legal journey. To learn more, visit our website, speedmooting.com.
Be
So
that
would you
important.
have your own caseload then as a managing associate, or do you still, would you be working on the caseload of a partner?
Yeah, so I guess it's slightly different with the commercial solicitor side of things. So we'll have a matter, and a matter might be a transaction, let's
Right.
say an M&A transaction, a company's buying another company. That work is usually going to come in maybe through your corporate department. So there'd
Mhm.
be a partner in the corporate department. They're going to look after things like your share purchase agreements, your corporate resolutions. And then our team will come in and we might do, for example, a master services agreement, or we might diligence some telecoms registrations. And so that will be referred to a partner supervising our team. Under that partner, you'll have an MA. And then
Mhm.
under that MA, you'll have more junior associates and potentially trainees.
Right.
Depends on the size of the matter, really.
Yeah. Oh wow. Sounds really interesting. And of course, with more seniority, you've got, more of a hands-on approach with the deals that you're
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
But
overseeing.
it's good fun. I always think, more responsibility is a good thing. It makes the deal more interesting. If the advice that you're giving matters,
Mhm.
if the choices that you're making matter, I find that a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I actually asked for that promotion early and was told to wait to sign in because I was so keen to get the responsibility. But I think if for those who are looking to move up in their career, the more responsibility you can get early on, the better, and the more comfortable you'll be with that.
Mm.
Just to go back to work training and working at Bradburns, actually training at a smaller firm, you get a lot more responsibility a lot earlier,
Yes.
and that is something that you then carry forward throughout the rest of your career. That comfortableness, those strong shoulders to carry it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great benefit of training at a smaller firm.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
I was the same. I trained at a small firm, but as you say, because it's such a small firm, I was, working very closely with the senior partner at the firm and got to see all the day-to-day workings of the firm itself. But not only that, I got to see how a law firm itself should be run. So I was involved, very much a bigger cog in the wheel than I would have been otherwise. And it's probably the same for yourself being with a smaller firm. So yeah, I think that certainly put me in good stead and helped me significantly throughout my career. So yeah, so we were talking about TMT before. Would you like to explain to us what the acronym stands for and what TMT is?
yeah, yeah. So well, let's start with the acronym. So TMT is technology, media, and telecommunications, telecoms. In our firm, and I think in lots of firms, actually, it is something of a misnomer.
Mhm.
In that what we do is often a lot broader than that. You find that actually the TMT department is something of a commercial contracting department.
Mhm.
So anything to do with services, really. If you imagine a corporate department and a commercial department, the corporate department is dealing with the agreements that move shares or move assets.
Right.
And then the commercial department is dealing with the services and the revenue flows for those services, which can be
Yes.
very important for the rest of the transaction built on top of those. So that's sort of our bag on the commercial level. We also do pharmaceutical in our firm. So we work for big pharma, we do life sciences and healthcare and things like that. And then moving into the actual acronym itself. So this is why it's such a misnomer. We've only just got to what the acronym. So obviously in tech, we'll be working for, some big tech names. We might be working on AI regulation, online harms, super relevant at the moment when we see some of these riots that are going on at the moment.
Mm.
Lots of that people are saying, driven by activity on social media. What
Right.
sort of responsibility should those social media giants have for policing the content on their platforms? And then the flip side of that, how can they actually go about policing content that is not in and of itself technically illegal, but
Mm.
causes harm by what it does? So really complicated questions around that, around AI as well, around data protection. Those who were reading emails in 2018 will know all about the general data protection regulation, but that work goes on. And then, further down the value chain, maybe looking at software procurement, software development, hardware purchasing, equipment purchasing, etc.
Wow.
Then in the middle, you've got the media section. So media, that might be media licensing, whether you need a broadcast license. And then you might do some uh, publishing regulations around newspapers or magazines. I think it's less so, more newspapers are regulated in the UK.
Yeah.
And then finally, telecoms. So telecoms is, how we're speaking right now across the internet. It might be a fiber optic network that's being bought and sold or being invested into,
Right.
or cell phone towers. That's actually a really big asset class for transactions at the moment. The rollout of 5G obviously takes a lot of investment, and that
Mhm.
investment's got to come from somewhere. And
Yeah.
how it gets in, that's a transaction. That's exactly the kind of thing that we do. And on the more interesting end, no shade to the fiber and tower operators out there, but space is really starting to become more exciting, and we're seeing some satellite deals, some ground station deals as well.
Really interesting.
It's good stuff.
You must have such a broad knowledge base on such random topics.
Unfortunately,
Good,
yeah.
good, good, good person to have in a pub quiz.
I'm not sure I can blame all of that on my this experience, though, unfortunately.
So, just before we move on, would you like to tell us about some of your most memorable moments so far from your legal career?
Yeah, so there's a couple of standout pieces. I guess maybe one good, one bad might be more interesting. So one of the more interesting things I remember as a trainee being sent on a train to Newcastle
Hmm.
with two sort of printer paper boxes full of hard copy contracts
Right.
uh, for the Commonwealth Games. So we went off to Birmingham. It was all signed on Sky TV. If anyone's got it recorded, you'll see as it's being signed just the back of my head. That's back when I had hair, so you might not recognize me. But that was a sort of great day out. And one of those things that was like easy to understand how you contributing to such a big international project and early in the career as well, which was nice.
Oh, wow.
And then I said I'd give you a bad one as well. So bad but funny. I remember being on a corporate deal very early in my career. So, as part of a corporate transaction, you'll normally have a sort of almost like a Dropbox online
Hmm.
with all documents about the company that you're buying. It's called the data room or
Right.
virtual data room. And so, this is gigabytes and gigabytes of data that's all been reviewed, checked off. The versions are exactly the versions that they need to be, and they
Mhm.
will be relevant to the warranties in the purchase agreement. So they will actually determine whether or not you'll be able to make claims under this agreement at a later stage. And on the night before signing, I deleted the entire thing. Yeah, yeah. So cue, a couple of minutes of panic, just sheer panic. Eventually standing up, owning up to what I'd done to the partner who was sitting opposite me, who told me, well, get on the phone to the data room provider. So I was calling some data room provider based in the US about 1 in the morning, begging them to please reinstate everything that I'd just accidentally deleted. They were able to in the end, so it was all okay.
Yeah. So you were saying there about 1 in the morning. I would imagine with the kind of work you're doing, particularly the M&A stuff, are there ever any sort of cross-border transactions you deal with, and therefore, you're completing at 2, 3, 4 in the morning? Does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a lot of clients all over the world. We've got clients in Australia, across the Asia Pacific, Hong Kong, China, Japan, and in the US as well, both North and South America, as well as Europe. So if you want a big transaction, you can find yourself sometimes slipping into a slightly different routine,
Yeah.
where you're waking up maybe a lot earlier in the morning to pick up, say, the afternoon of a Hong Kong client to make sure you can speak to them about what they need from you that day. Or maybe you're being able to get a slight head start before
Mhm.
your clients in New York wake up and hit their desks, so you can then,
I see.
present to them, well, look how much progress we've made today, which is quite nice. I'd say that the worst is when you've got Europe, Asia, and the Americas all on one deal, because finding a time that works for everyone there is just an absolute nightmare.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
So that could happen for quite a few days or weeks then, where you have to sort of change your working and your sleeping pattern.
yeah, absolutely. It goes on for months sometimes.
Wow.
I had it actually where I noticed I was working with an Italian client really closely over a period of months, and I found my sentence structure was changing,
Oh, right.
even in my own speech, because I was just used to speaking to Italians all day. Even though
Mm.
I wasn't speaking Italian, they were speaking English to me, and I was speaking English back to them. They were sort of live translating in their heads
Right.
from Italian to English, and so the sentence structure was different. And I found you sort of pick that up too, which was quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I think the final question I've got to ask, being in obviously a magic circle firm, you're dealing with sort of corporate commercial type work. Is it anything like Suits?
So I think, I don't want to lead people astray, so I'll caveat my answer with absolutely not. Uh, but every now and then, so we had a short notice in-person negotiation recently. So it's like late on a Saturday or Sunday night, it must have been. Email comes through. You need to book a flight to Zurich. We're negotiating on Monday, and that feels quite cool. And then you're there at Heathrow working away on your laptop, hopping on a plane, going over and meeting all the clients in person, seeing great new cities and places. So yeah, they were all real exciting. This is worth it moments.
Yeah.
But don't expect to get a job without a law degree or with a suitcase full of illegal drugs.
Yeah. That's when you end up coming to see me.
Yeah, correct.
Obviously, I've asked a little bit about your career. Now, time to ask you some questions that may help the next generation. So, first things first, what would you say makes a good solicitor?
I think it's tough. It's a skill set, I think, rather than a skill. There is more than one strand to what you need to be able to do. I
Mm.
think you need to know your part of the law inside out, like really deeply know it. We have this idea of the T-shaped professional. So for your law bit, deeply, and then you know a little bit about all the other pieces of law that your firm does as well, so that you can speak confidently, spot issues, cross-sell. So I think that is like a given. Maybe the T aspect of it, the crossbar, is something you develop over time, but knowing your area of law well,
Mhm.
that's an absolute must. And then I think the other key component is the soft skills that go around it. You're expected to work with people. You might be sharing an office with someone. You might be in an open plan office. You need social skills to be able to get on with those people,
Yes.
but not just the people that you work with the clients as well. And I think, you have to, some firms, I think, would ask themselves when they're looking at potential trainees or potential lateral hires, is this person someone I could confidently leave alone in a room with my client? Are they going to, be able to keep that conversation flowing, be able to handle any unexpected questions that might come up? So I think having that ability to be flexible and interact with all different kinds of people, that's absolutely vital as well.
Yeah. No, great advice there. And it's things that, as you say, are quite often overlooked. But I think the soft skills are absolutely crucial for any type of lawyer. I've never heard that phrase before, the T-shaped professional. But it makes a lot of sense actually, and I think
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's really important
Good one
actually.
to think about. Yeah.
So yeah, certainly one to think about there. The T-shaped professional. Common misconception as well is that as a solicitor, and particularly a solicitor who doesn't perform advocacy, a common misconception is that it might be, well, you don't really need public speaking skills or communication skills. And I think you've probably touched upon this a little bit, but what would you say to somebody who says, well, as a solicitor, communication's not really that important. Don't panic about it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I, I think you'd struggle without communication skills. I think you need to understand that as you go through your career, you are going to have to interact with people, especially on the solicitor. Well, I guess the same for barristers, but you're not just the sort of production unit of the firm. You're also almost the sales department.
Mm,
So you're doing a lot of business development. That might be given, sort of training sessions. That might be speaking to rooms of people, hundreds of people potentially. You will eventually be expected to be confident while you're doing that. Maybe not at the very junior level, but it's something that you would have to work on over time. And I think the other key point to remember is that, negotiations are face to face. What you say in it, well, or sometimes teams, but they go better in person. But what you say in that room and how you deliver it, how whether you've got the emotional intelligence to sort of read your opponent, understand where they're coming from, and respond appropriately, that is ultimately going to determine, to a large part, what gets written on the page. And as we started with, the power of those words on the page, they're going to determine your client's rights and obligations going forward, potentially for decades. If
mm,
you don't get it right in that room, you're going to have a very difficult uphill battle trying to fix it later,
yeah.
by email or something. So I think, yeah, just as important
Yeah.
as for a barrister. Yeah,
Absolutely. And it comes back to, what you were just saying there about sales, because ultimately, even in a negotiation, you need to be persuasive. You need to sell your client's case and what the strengths of it are to try and get the best possible outcome there. So yeah, completely agree. It doesn't matter what type of lawyer you are, whether you're doing advocacy or not, persuasion and public speaking is absolutely crucial. And it's something that can be learned. Anybody can pick that skill up. It's just about practice and developing the skill over time.
yeah.
So if you were to go back in time then, Danny, is there anything that you would do differently, maybe during your days before you got your training contract?
Yeah, so I guess, I started a little late with my applications. I worked throughout my studies, so it was a bit difficult to pick up work experience. I really thought, it would just come along, or maybe the university would sort it out for me. I thought maybe someone would let me know when the time really was to start my applications. And in the event, I ended up starting a little later than lots of other people that I work with today, although, not the latest. So I think, if I could advise a younger me, I'd tell him, get cracking on those applications, even right off from first year. That's just practice. Don't worry about it. Get good at writing application forms, get good at explaining why someone should hire you. And then
Mm.
you've still got two more goes at it
Yeah.
thereafter.
Have you got any tips for completing application forms?
Oh, it's been a long time since I've done one. I'd say, think it through. Anything you write on the form, you need to be prepared to sort of defend in an interview as well. You need to be confident in it. So no, twisting the truth, or no, just copying and pasting things that you've read on the internet. Actually think it through. And I guess the classic tip is always make sure it's tailored to the firm or the
Yeah.
set that you're applying to. Do not put someone else's firm name in an application. Yeah.
Yeah, great advice there. Well, we're coming up towards the end, Danny. So I'm just going to finish with a few quick fire questions. So we always like to finish with some nice, fun, light-hearted ones. So first one, winter or summer?
Oh, it's got to be summer.
Yeah,
Barbecues and sunshine.
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Cats or dogs?
Gonna have to go with cats. I've got two cats now. So yeah, I
Yeah.
feel disloyal if I went against them, I think.
Favorite food and drink?
Ooh, drink's got to be whiskey. Food's got to be wings.
Wings. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Particular type of sauce? Do you like it really hot or do you like it mild?
I actually go for just the dry, spicy wings. If anyone's watching from London, in South London in particular, you can go to Morley's. I think they've got the best wings.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Perfect. And the last one, if you were not a lawyer, what would you be?
So easy on this one. I think I'd be a bartender. I was a bartender for around 10 years, during and before my studies. Loved every second of it. I think there's a whole parallel universe where I probably still am a bartender.
Well, if ever you get bored, I'm sure there's another job out there for you.
Yeah.
I'll give you a bonus question as well. I ask this to most of my guests, so I'll ask it to yourself. Crisps on a sandwich, do they belong?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, right answer. Well, that brings us towards the end. I've had an absolute pleasure speaking with you again, Danny. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot from you. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.